Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. I'm sitting in Cory's house. I don't know if you want to say your last name, if it matters.
That doesn't matter.
But, okay, sitting in Cory's house, and I reconnected with him sort of randomly, I guess, because you work with Terry.
Right.
And so... for those of you that listen to the podcast a lot, Terry's been on a lot, and so Terry just messages me one night and goes, "Oh, hey, I know this guy at work, and he likes having these sorts of conversations too," and so you kind of hit me up about it and was like, "Hey, when do you record these podcasts? I want to be on the podcast." So. All right, so to start with, who are you, I guess?
Okay. Well, my name is Cory. I actually was about 1 degree of separation from Santiago. It was kind of a small world situation, just the part of the country we live in. From the people we know, and we went to schools in the same district. So I actually tangentially knew who he was, but, the vagaries of what they are, we just kind of drifted apart for years and then came back together. It was funny. I met Terry. I mean, I'd seen him around, but we actually started talking when either I interrupted one of his conversations or he interrupted one of mine or just butted in. We were talking about something similar in the break room anyways, and he told me about his friend Santiago, and he goes, he's got a podcast. Podcasting is what he does. And from the way he described it, I thought that was that was your job.
Oh.
I thought that was it. And I was like, oh man, so when I messaged you on Facebook, like, hey, let me do your podcast, that's what I thought you, like, Terry told me at that point that this was just, which was amusing. So anyways, back to the point of your question. I'm 23. I am working, to, eventually go back to school. Mm-hmm. I had originally been going to Oklahoma State many years ago, and ran into a bunch of brick walls almost immediately because I wasn't really ready for it. And this will, I'm sure, come up more when we start talking about who I am and kind of my life to date, and really kind of broke the image that I had of me when I was 18, because of course I knew everything in the world.
Sure.
When I was 18. But a lot of the real deep motivations didn't really go away. I'm really interested in people in aggregate. I'm all about current events. I'm all about kind of the near future, the trend lines. I've always been drawn to that type of stuff. I enjoy languages. I enjoy traveling. Really, any part of the social sciences I enjoy. Everything from geography to history to political science is always what I've been drawn to, and been a musician. Ironically, me and Santiago played the same instrument.
Yeah.
Just kind of building back up from, getting hit really hard.
What'd you major in?
I was a poli-sci major with a minor in French.
Okay. Are you gonna jump back into that, or are
probably
you gonna
not
switch?
minoring in French?
Okay.
I'm probably gonna minor in something like systems theory.
Okay.
Or something where you apply big data and trend lines to what you're seeing to say, okay, if this is true and this is true, then probabilistically this is true, and this is where everything from like the future of finance to the future of like population is going, which. But probably poli-sci. I mean, I know where my passion is. I'm not trying, when I go back, I'm not trying to find myself. I'm going there specifically to, and I don't think I could have been able to say that at 18. I don't think very many people are able to say that at 18. And so, ironically, failing as hard as I did, as early as I did, and as hard as I did, and as painfully as I did, is, I think, actually, I'm sure of it, going to set me up to be much more successful the next time around. Yeah. In the meantime, I'm doing things like this. This is my first ever podcast, and I'm listening to more and more of them. But I would have never considered doing them at 18. Mm-hmm. It's kind of strange. I was actually really cloistered growing up, and so I'm now kind of experiencing this kind of whole new world scenario like yearly, and I feel like I'm a late bloomer in this regard. I used to say that I thought I was behind, and I don't really believe that anymore because it's not like I'm running a race. But I am kind of getting into things that a lot of my friends have been into for 5 or 6 or 7 years that they started getting into in late high school that I just didn't because upbringing and also just personality. I don't think I was anywhere near as mature as even most people were in a lot of ways at 18, just because of my personality and just because of the way I was raised, which is interesting. And I'm getting into podcasting, and a lot of my friends have been listening and responding to them, having their own YouTube channels. That was never me growing up, and so I'm finally kind of turning over that corner and getting into it. So that's my meantime until I go back and get all of these big ticket items and actually start adulting.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what a lot of people come to find is that the world kind of expects them to just jump out into college, expect that they know what they want to do for the rest of their lives, and expect them to be able to maintain themselves while also having to deal with the fact that you're still basically a child now trying to deal with bills and schedules and all that junk. And so you mentioned it a lot, but what was it that, what was your brick wall whenever you jumped into college?
Ooh, lad. Well, it was a lot of different things at once. There's a lot of different things that have been building. There's a lot of things that just my own hubris and stupidity brought down. I mean, everybody has their brick wall story from college. A lot of people, drop out because of it. A lot of people get through it. A lot of people, it just completely fucks up their plans and they have to completely change around. For me, it just completely and totally broke what my conception was. So I had, this plan from when I graduated high school all up until my late 20s, if this is what I was going to do and be and whatever. A lot of it was ideas that were not my own.
Yeah.
Or ideas that I thought that it was what I really wanted, but wasn't. Some of these things were things that I really did want, but that ended up, being so different than what I did. I'm not to give specifics. I had no conception of self-responsibility. I had no concept of independence either, because I never had any before. I started breaking down really, really quickly. I'd always been a very good student, but I'd also had parents that wouldn't let me fail. And so I'm not really sure, even to this day, how much of my success in high school was really mine or really theirs. Because I'd had, no small failures, leading up to any amount of resiliency, I started failing just academically and also just psychologically almost immediately. Because I had, I had a measure of freedom that I had absolutely no idea what to do with.
Yeah.
Which actually meant that I didn't end up doing all that much with it. I didn't, build up doing what I actually wanted to do. In a lot of ways, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be how I had been for my entire life up at that point. Second thing is that, the things that I started to do were actually really, really dumb. I ended up getting arrested when I was up in Stillwater for just a piece of abject stupidity that I had done over the summer that originally was begun because I was trying to help someone, and I just wasn't thinking at 18 and a half of any bad ramifications that could come from this, because of course I had perfect intentions and I was a smart kid who had never gotten in trouble before. It was just, there was an entirely different mindset than what I have now. It's almost difficult to reach back and to really describe what I was thinking, because it's years on now and a completely different outlook on just about everything that I do. It's almost like talking about a different person.
Yeah.
I actually had a scholarship to OSU. I had a full ride scholarship with ROTC. I'd always been interested in the military, which is funny because no one in my family did that. Mm-hmm. It really was an outreach of me being so interested in political affairs and foreign affairs and what goes on in the world, that it just kind of seemed natural that I was going to do that. I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
Either. I was not. I don't think on my own I would have qualified for the scholarship. And getting up there and having to be on my own, and not knowing how to form my own support group on my own left me extraordinarily isolated. And I ended up losing that as well. So getting arrested actually happened because of lies on another person's part. At 18, I underestimated how far an abuser would go to defend himself and keep on being abusive. And he ended up accusing me of some pretty heinous shit, which I didn't do, but I was dumb enough to put myself in a position where I ended up getting accused. Tried to help a person out that I knew actually through band. That was my biggest outlet in high school. That and cross country. And I tried to help her out over the summer because her guardian was,
I mean, it's something that it makes sense that it would happen. I'm not saying that it was bound to happen, but it makes sense that it would happen exactly because of who you were.
Well, yeah, I was careless as well.
Yeah,
nothing bad could happen to me at 18 because I was the smartest guy in the room. There was a lot of hubris and arrogance responding. I don't feel like I'm doing a good job here. I've got I've got volumes, I've got lectures in my head about what happened, but it's difficult to get that actually out because there is a lot of latent information, emotion, and also just because I'm not exactly sure what I want to say. It's the most painful thing that's ever happened to me. Everything that I thought I was going to do went away. I lost my relationship with my sister for a while, and she was going through almost the exact same thing as I was as well. We were not ready, she and I both, and we're the same age. We're twins. We were not ready to go to college, either one of us. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But that's the singular worst event in the singular worst series of events in my life, and it's this is the first time I'm been recorded talking about it, and this is probably one of the worst times or worst spiels that I've given about what happened. So it's
But okay, so allow me to help you out.
Sure.
And you don't even have to elaborate more on it, but just I acknowledge that you see it as this grand failure, but it was also the biggest learning experience for you.
Undoubtedly, yes.
And I had one of those too. If you've listened to my first podcast,
gotta be honest with you, bro. I haven't.
That's okay. I was just speaking in general to the audience.
I intend to, but
and so, looking back at those big failures of ours, from a higher point on the mountain, you're able to see that I had to go through that to become who I am.
Right.
Because if you hadn't, you'd still be I would still be the same punk kid that thought I could,
Sure. And I mean, it's been 5 years now. So I can, I agree with you. I would most assuredly say I'm more mature and I'm more grounded now. It was years worth of delusions ripped away, and also a learning experience about exactly how the world works. I don't really think I can I can stress enough how cloistered and removed from the average person's experience I was growing up.
If you'll allow me to be more brutally honest, just in my basic, I guess, impression of you, that even in I'm in your house and I can look around and go, oh, I can see, and then I see your parents and I see that I can see how what you're saying is that, oh man, I was very closeted from the realities.
That was definitely the case, and that's kind of the way my family worked or didn't work. There's a lot of hidden dysfunction to this day that I don't think we're ever going to be actually able to work with until I'm on my own. So that's my goal right now, is to get enough independence to move out and start again. But it's strange in that it really broke my relationship with my parents as well, because all of the comfortable delusions that we, it's funny. This whole podcast is about getting into depth and actually having real conversations. I can't do what I'm doing with you with my father. We do what's called conversational dancing. Where he says what he's supposed to say, and I respond with what I'm supposed to respond with, and that's, we delve a little bit below that, but there's definitely red lines that we can't cross without hurting the other one. And I've never had an organic relationship with him, but his rules govern my upbringing so much that I feel like I didn't have organic relationship with very many other people either. So I was a perennial outsider, not in the sense that I was like the kid with the goth clothing sitting in the corner, but just that there was a shallowness and a sense of being one arm tied behind your back, handicapped, or one step removed from the way that other people work. Just because growing up, I just wasn't allowed to be around other people in ways like that. And this was everything from not being allowed movies, really up until I left for college. And it's gotten better now, just because I'm old enough that and I work and I have my own money, that there's just a level of no, I'm going to do this anyways. That you gotta that it just kind of happens. But when I say I'm a late bloomer, I definitely am. I feel like I'm at now the level that most people are when they're 18 or 19, which will be great when I turn 40. But for now, it really is frustrating a lot of the times. To be brutally honest, and you knew me back in the day. I'm sure you can corroborate a lot of this. And of course, your girlfriend knew me even better, and she can certainly corroborate that. So you were talking earlier, and I don't want to incriminate her on a podcast. No, that's fine. Does not like me very much, and I didn't know this because she hides it very well, and we weren't all that great of acquaintances. But and I could honestly see why, because I was always trying to compensate and trying to break in an organic way the few times that I was able to. And this meant that I was always performing, so to speak, and I don't really feel like I do that now because delusion stripped away. So
okay, man, I'm so glad that we got your big this is the thing that broke me. And so, we're not gonna jump into the other one yet, but just even on a little more surface level, why is it that political science and these systems and statistics really resonate with you?
Because they affect everybody. there's not a facet of your life that isn't affected by it, for good or for ill. People hate that that's the case. I mean, you'd like to have a little bit that isn't, but it is. And I've always trended towards thinking about the macro. Mm-hmm. To the extent that sometimes I neglect, my actual, this is what I have to do today, because I'm like, hey, in 5 years from now, the Chinese market is going to do this, and so I'm like, and it's, it's dumb, but that's what I do. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I have always trended towards the macro. And so when people are like, I want to help kids with, neurological disorders, and I'm like, great. I want to talk about how, borderlines drawn in the aftermath of World War I in the Middle East are contributing to, and then I just word vomit and people's eyes glaze over, and that's what I do. But that's always been what I'm just drawn to. It's what I'm passionate about. It's what I'm good at. Mm-hmm. I've got libraries in my mind about where everything fits together in the world. But also I enjoy understanding. Mm-hmm. There's enough information, and there's enough separate cross purposes agendas going on in the world, that there's a lot of obfuscation that goes on just as a natural part of people not wanting to know what they're up to. And I really do get a sense of enjoyment, almost in like a dog chasing a ball type of way, in really kind of figuring out, so this is how it works. Yeah. I'm not talking about a conspiracy type, I see the strings that control the system.
Sometimes it even
sometimes it is, but I'm not putting on my tinfoil hat this early. And so there really is just kind of a sense of this is fun in and of itself. Mm-hmm. This is not what I do yet. It's very difficult to break into this field if you don't have credentials. Mm-hmm. But this is what I do in my part time. I actually help run a website that collates primary sources for the Syrian civil war, and this is Twitter and Archive and YouTube and stuff, and you can take the primary sources that are happening literally as they're happening. Something happens in Syria, and within 15 minutes, Twitter is exploding just as surely as the bombs are. Mm-hmm. And you can collate, okay, so they're going here, and it's this particular group, and they're fighting this particular group, and sometimes two guys that you're following on separate sides will be like, go into so-and-so, and you're like, oh shit, we're going to get... We've gotten the same firefight filmed from both sides. Put up at the same time. We can almost 360-degree recreate specific instances just because everybody has a camera nowadays. Yeah. And so it's actually really easy. And so when I came back from Stillwater, I was actually very depressed, and it took me a long time to get out of it. But one of the only things that I fell into was just this, because it was almost direct escapism to begin with. That's another reason. It's important. There's a sense of what goes on in this sphere affects everyone else, and I think that growing up, that was also a part of it. It was the sense of I'm not just this kid who reads good in central Oklahoma. Now I'm an audience to world-changing events. Thing. Which is also one of the reasons that I so desperately wanted to join the military, because that's what they do, right? And no, if I had graduated in 2015 and commissioned, we ran out of wars before I would have commissioned. I understand that I probably would be some bored as shit intel officer in Fort Drum in upstate middle of nowhere, New York, hating life. But I also don't want to just sour grapes that I might be doing something great, but it doesn't matter. That world's closed now. But I still want to do something there, because even when I was depressed, even when my world was ending, and I had suicidal thoughts because everything that I figured that I was going to do, I didn't have a backup plan, had crumbled. That was what I was doing, and it was really in that moment when I didn't have to read a motivational book that said, "Hey, what do you do in your free time?" When it just kind of clicked. I was like, "This is the only thing that I'm doing." I lost contact with almost all of my friends. I'm not talking to the ones that I kept contact with, just because depression is a silly thing and makes you not want to seek help to beat it. But I was talking to these Arab guys and these Syrian Christians and these guys, these refugees halfway across the world, and kind of forming this 24-hour around the clock net together to start this website. And that was kind of the moment that I was like, hey, there's still something here. And so that's how I know that that's what I want to do. Is that's pretty much the only thing that I wanted to do on my bad day. And it's funny, the closer that I get towards it, the more I start to want to do other things as well. There's an enormous amount of inner peace I get from even taking small steps towards that, and then I can say, hey, you know, I've there's a concept, I think I read this on Reddit actually. You can tell I'm depressed because I have a Reddit account. Called No Zero Days. It doesn't matter what you do so long as you take one step to make it not a wasted day. And so long as I get that out of the way, then all of the rest of my stuff to kind of make, to make myself a well-rounded person comes back in. Dance classes, music again, writing, being social, whatever, kind of comes back in. But kind of the central pillar of that is this central, what is the world going to be like, and how do we best take advantage of these monumental changes that are headed our way. And so that's kind of what I want to do. Actually, that is what I want to do.
Yeah. To talk about it a little bit, there's something very different about zooming out and going. Kind of like how you said that the drawing of the lines in World War I affected this and this. Right. But like, it's something else that it takes. You really do have to zoom out in order to see the impact, almost in zooming out in time. That as soon as something happens, you can't immediately go, well, it's because of this, or
right.
But then immediately, like maybe afterwards, you go, oh man, this is a direct link.
Yeah. But it takes both. We live in a world that likes to break things down into the smallest unit possible, and I tend to want to put things into a much more holistic sphere. So instead of breaking it down to an atomized level, you take the history and the culture of the region and all the different fault lines, the ethno-religious, age. Ideological splits, and you start building it together to create a holistic picture. But that doesn't mean that these very small details don't matter. It just means that you have to add them into something that creates something that's greater than the sum of its parts, which is ideally what I want to do. Is to take these disparate sources of information and create something that is holistically more complete. And it's difficult to do that in the best of times, but especially in something as rapidly changing as international politics, particularly in war zones, which is what I'm drawn to. Where everybody for obvious reasons is just going haywire, and there's just information and misinformation and reinformation and redacted information and then outright lies just getting thrown around. That it takes some context, and I think that's really what. Being as interested in history as I've always been helps. Is you can understand trend lines, which is what I talked about with you before we actually fired the recorder up. To view things on a longer timeline, really even than a human lifespan, to get to this point, and it really helps calm down the day-to-day events, and kind of put this into context.
I mean, a lot of times it does seem, because especially if you just follow kind of the day-to-day without zooming out, really, it just kind of looks like, especially with what you're talking about, it just kind of looks like another bombing.
Right. It's just profusion of another bombing of never ceasing succession of crises.
Yeah.
That are just And you're right. If Twitter existed during World War II, can you imagine the type of what I mean? Like the fact that we're 70 years past from that means we can pick out all the this was important because hindsight being 20/20 and having 70 years of that, and so. That's what I mean by wanting to put things in context and wanting to look for a holistic thing. Like, yeah, there are going to be, like, up-to-the-minute things that are like, this changes everything. But, like, those don't happen once a day. And so I've been doing this for about 4 years now. following this and putting out analyses of videos and putting out analyses of satellite footage. There's open source satellite footage that crosses over Syria once or twice a day that we can use to even pinpoint the movement of individual vehicles.
Yeah.
Then we can match that with the precise Twitter locations of people that we follow, and if they match up, something big is about to happen because tanks don't just roll on their own to right up to the doorstep of your local militia commander. But and it's funny because the fighters themselves are the ones that are the most guilty of this, and I think this is because they're hyping themselves up. Like, they have to believe that everything is going to be like the biggest thing. So it's like future war-ending offensive coming up. Take 127. If whatever, and so you just kind of back it up and like, all right, but then you start looking at the trend lines of those. What's changing, and it's been interesting to watch these guys coalesce from these basically shopkeepers that were closing down shop early so they could go and buy ammunition on the black market and shoot at the local army government commander in the evenings, to now you've got effectively full-time paid rebels in the country with their own artillery, most of it homemade, armored units, tanks, technicals, machine guns, mortars, what have you, over the course of 4 to 5 years of that. And to see, where all in the world, there's a huge, enormous black market. So when I'm talking about, conflict, I'm not just talking about, people on the battlefield. I'm talking about the way the world changes to accommodate a war in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And the fact that the economy doesn't stop. It just goes underground. Every time you break a free market, you create a black market. And the biggest black market in the world right now is in northern Syria. Everybody in the world has something to trade there, and most of them do. So it's been fun to try and track that as well.
Yeah.
It's all tangent all day on that.
But no, it's good to see that. I mean, you're not just BSing. You're like, this is your thing, and I really enjoy that. There's this kind of thing that's whenever you get someone talking about their thing, that there's like this little joy in there. Like, it's great.
Well, it was funny. I was talking to a guy in Australia. And I don't know his name. I just know his username because when we're talking about an open source network, this is not a hierarchy. I'm not the CEO. I don't pay people.
Yeah.
This is a network of people who are connected via the internet, and we can message each other in real time. But we're doing this as a labor of love. So it's not like a company that I run with, which is actually kind of the beauty of it because there's no barrier to entry. People who are literally in boats in the Mediterranean, who've smuggled themselves into Libya trying to get into Italy, having fled Syria, can live tweet me going, "Hey, here's what the smuggling route looks like today for so and so." Like it's cool. But we were talking about recent suicide attacks in Iraq and how they've changed, and how Daesh, which is ISIS, in Arabic their name is Dawla Islamiyya wal Iraq al-Sham, which means Dawla, State, Islamiyya, Islamic, wal Iraq, for Iraq, al-Sham, and Sham. Sham means the Levant. The Levant means all the Middle East that drains into the Mediterranean. If it drains in the Gulf, it's not Sham. So they're already branding themselves as we're all of the jihadists that live in this box, basically. But the Arabs just call them Daesh because Dawla Islamiyya what is really long. So Daesh, ISIS, has switched over to basically not boot camping a lot of their attackers. And they just put so much open source information out on the internet that a lone wolf guy can basically download jihad in a box. And if he has access to weapons, which everybody in the Middle East has access to a mind-blowing amount of lethal stuff, that they're basically supercharging lone wolf attacks. And he and I were talking about, they were like, hey, this information is spread worldwide. How long do you think it's going to take for a lone wolf of Iraqi scale, dozens dead, to happen? Less than a month later, Orlando happens. So I was at work when I heard about it, because I work really early in the morning, and so I was actually getting live updates and sneaking away in the corner and watching this, and people thought I was just the psychopath because I was like, "Ha! I knew it! I knew!" And it's horrible, but when you've talked about something and you see it happening, and you're putting out these analyses of hey, This is how it's changing, and this is probably what something is going to look like. And then less than a month later, it happens. I'm not saying I predicted it because there was differences. I mean, this guy had been on the watch list, so we didn't come out of nowhere. It's America, so aside from like active war zones, we're probably the largest arms market in the world. In fact, I know we are. So it's not like I'm saying that like nobody could have seen this coming except me. But I mean, like I got close enough to be like almost gratified that I was that close, and then I had to take a step back, and I was like, these are people. And so it wasn't like I was making light of a tragedy, but it was like I had such an understanding that most people don't, because this doesn't come out of nowhere. I had kind of a depth of context that most people don't have and also don't want. I mean, I understand that like I exist in a type of nerd bubble that very few people do, and I'm okay with that. Because I don't, and it's funny because I'll hear people do the exact same thing about, like fantasy games or like, Warhammer 40K, which has a similar body count to what I actually follow, except it's in real life. And I'm like, cool, you do you. And so I understand that, when I normally talk about this, it's not in a podcast where he specifically is asking me these questions. Like, I do dial it back because, I understand, like, nobody cares. My sister doesn't care. Nobody else doesn't care. Like, it's fine. I'm cool with that. But it is really cool for me to be able to have these aha moments where I'm like, yes, this is the future. And to kind of get out ahead of that and to say, hey, this is... And so then the question becomes, how do you prepare for this? How is the world going to change in response to this? Because that's what I want. That's what I want to do. Is to get out ahead of the processes that are rapidly reshaping the world that we live in, the world that we were trained and grown to inhabit, is being broken apart. And that's not always a violent process. The economics in this country are changing, and that's not because of ISIS, but it's more of an indelible process than ISIS for the way that we're going to have to live. And so that's the other half of what I do, but... I run a website that collates the Syrian civil war, and so that's kind of my day in, day out political science thing. Actually, I quit that the last time I tried to join the military. I tried to join the Marines last year, and I almost got in. I got a second edition for the Marine Band, and I had a background check coming back to do intelligence. And they ended up turning me down because of that arrest. And after that, I was like, fuck everything. Like, I stopped doing the website. I had a double dip depression, and I'm bouncing back from that. And that, honestly, I held on to all of these delusions for so long that I was like, hey, I can make this work still. And that was the straw. And I was just like, I gotta do things completely differently. Which is funny because, like, what I wanted to do didn't change. But the way in which I want to do it and just the mindset that I have to do this is very, very different. And so instead of being like the guy that wants to save everything, now I just want to understand. And now I just want to, to kind of create as I go along and be a lot more open about it. Because old me didn't work very well and was not as complete of a person as I thought he was. But yeah, that's... what was the question?
I think at some point you start realizing, for one, whenever you got like stoked, I guess, that like, oh, Orlando happened, but it shows that the information makes sense, and the information is working,
right?
And so that shows that what you're doing is important, and that you can still take part in it. Okay, so since we are at that point, the next part is that what is it that like fuels your views of the world, and what is your view of the world, basically?
I mean,
and then
I think you might be the first person to have ever asked me that specific question because I've been the politics guy for so long that it's so thank you for that. I don't know. I mean, the world as a whole is going to hell, has always been going to hell, and will always be here. So I'm not apocalyptic in my outlook, because even though I deal with some pretty heavy stuff, we've been here before.
Yeah.
And there's in a lot of ways, the world's going pretty great, and the outlook looks pretty good with some definite caveats when you talk about feedback loops and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, when you talk about the world as a whole, I think it's very difficult to talk about the world as a whole in anything other than philosophical terms, because we don't behave like the world as a whole. I kind of roll my eyes at people who talk about like one world and stuff like that, because it's like I can't get 4 of my friends to agree on something. I'm not going to get 7+, trending towards 9+, ending at 11+ billion people to agree on something. Which is why, what I really want to focus on in aggregate is trend lines. Is I don't want to treat the world as if it's one giant person that you can have a conversation with, because it's not. And trying to, have a friendly neighborhood conversation with the whole world will always leave you frustrated, because the world does not behave like that. So, what I think about the world is it's fascinating. I love it. It's what I want to do. There's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new or have something challenged just by opening myself up to the information that is flowing in ever-increasing quantities from the world as it gets more networked. And that's, so when I say I love it in aggregate, I meet an asshole every day. And I don't like that, because there's so many of them. But it's outweighed, it really is, just in aggregate. Like, I don't have to dig for it. It really just is outweighed by the amount of people who are just like, yes, let me connect with you, which is funny, because I'm actually really isolated right now in a personal sense, just because of everything that happened. And I'm still rebuilding from that. Yeah. And so I didn't ever think I would be the guy who would be like, more connected online than he was offline. But I also don't think I really gave credit before everything went down, of just how isolated I was, just because of upbringing and personality. And I'm kind of cool with that, because my dreams go so much further than Oklahoma City and just Oklahoma. And so I enjoy having the ability to just have a conversation with a guy in Bangladesh, or have a conversation with a guy in Australia, or a guy in France. I get French lessons from a French dude over Skype. This is, and so eventually what I want to have the ability to do is to travel to these places, and have a job that either facilitates the travel or is location independent enough that I can just go around and just experience, because that's I love it. I've traveled just enough to know that that's what I want to do. But dialing it back to to just your question, which again I think is purely philosophical, because you can't talk about you have to as soon as you start talking about specifics, you have to start segregating, because you have to talk about context and things that let into it. Yeah. One thing about the world is the past 250 years on this planet has produced more stuff of anything you can measure than the previous everything. And the previous 100 years more than the previous 150. Yeah. And so we're reaching kind of an exponential function that's either going to lead to the greatest and most long-lasting breakthroughs humanity has or will ever have, or it's going to break the system we currently work under. And I think, honestly, it's going to do a little bit of both. I tend to lead more towards break stuff, because it's easier to break things than to create. Like I'm not.
That's very true.
It's kind of funny, and it's almost kind of cliche now to be cynical about everything, and I really don't think I am. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. I really just I tend towards break stuff just because it's easier. That's and so part of why I'm so interested in what I'm interested in is because I think we are, as a planet, reaching a whole lot of different tipping points. And I'm more interested in that because we're not doing that as one planet deciding to reach these tipping points. These tipping points are coming whether or not most people even want them. Or not. So really the question for me, because I'm not the one driving the wheel, and honestly I don't think anybody is. I don't think there's any one person who can stop or start or affect these processes as a single person. Barack Obama can't, the leader of the UN can't, the premier of China can't. There's no one person. Nobody's in the driver's seat of these things. The best you can do is get such a deep understanding that when they do start acting like roughly how you think they act, you're in a good position to react and take advantage of them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. That's why I do what I do. We're like, how long have we been recording for? We're like 45 minutes into the podcast, and now I've finally answered your first question. That's why I do what I do. Syria is just an almost daily reminder of why that is. Mm-hmm. Why that is, that's what I think about the world. We're living in times that can't be described with other times. We're living in times that can take a lot of knowledge from other times, but you can't go, oh, hey, 7 billion people. I remember back when the Akkadian Empire, like, no, we're not, we're in completely uncharted territory. And that terrifies me, but that also excites me because it means we can do things that we've never done before. Mm-hmm. But it terrifies me because those things might not all be good.
Yeah. So you more so lean towards the pessimistic side. But
I don't even think it's pessimistic, because if you understand that the system is going to break, you can be in position to not be hurt by it breaking. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. There's a separation between the individual and the system, mm-hmm. and that's not always the case. In fact, the people that are most going to be hurt, however the outcome is, mm-hmm. Good, like singularity, we've invented God in the computer, everything is fine. And, like the zombies have risen apocalypse thing, is the people who are most going to be hurt are the people who aren't able to think outside of the systems that they live in. Mm-hmm. And when I say systems, it's not just, mental systems of like, oh, hey, when I have a problem, I call the police. Because mm-hmm. I'm not like the prepper guy who's like, hey, I have like 300 guns, so when the zombies come, like, yeehaw, we're gonna... I mean, like, every single, process that is larger than yourself that you click into as a part of it, because that's what we do. That's what civilization mm-hmm. does, is it creates ever more complex and ever larger systems mm-hmm. for you to live within, some of which, by law or by culture, you're not allowed to get outside of. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that when you start talking about these things, because I'm not even saying you should get outside of them, but I am saying that it helps to think about getting outside of them, yes. because if for no other reason, it helps you understand the system that you're in better. And this is everything from the legal system to culture to religion mm-hmm. to the water that comes out of your pipes. Mm-hmm. These are all different types of systems that we are completely and totally dependent on. And to really kind of figure out, where this came from, where it's going, and how individuals can make better use of that, so that when these things start rapidly changing / breaking down, maybe both at the same time, mm-hmm. I and as many people as I can educate can profit or benefit from it.
Yeah. So what is your place within the because this is a fun question to always touch upon, but where do you stand on religion?
Okay. Well, that's a funny one. I've referenced, I think, 7 or 8 times in this podcast already. Kind of tangentially, I've been kind of treating it with kid gloves, the kind of stifling way I was brought up. In large part, that's because my parents were and are Protestant missionaries. In a way that, once you become a missionary, once you have that much faith to go abroad, you never stop mm-hmm. being that. And in a lot of ways, that was harmful. So, what do I think about religion? I think religion is one of the greatest things that mankind ever invented. Hmm. And by great, I don't just mean like, yay, religion. I mean like great in the classic, like, this is important.
Large.
Right. Just like weighty, meaningful, mm-hmm. Something that changes everything. But I am not religious, and I don't think I ever will be. For my own self, it was very frustrating growing up because I was the type of kid, I told you that I was the type of kid who had St. Augustine mm-hmm. and would read, and I would be like, okay, so why then? And nobody can answer. Or I would read, I was one of the only people who actually read the Bible mm-hmm. in my Sunday school group. And it was immensely frustrating to me growing up, because the group that I was with was my parents' church. I mean, that's how most people grew up. But it was right next to a separate high school that I was not a part of. And so most of the kids in the youth group were part of that high school. And so they would come in on Sunday, hungover from the parties that they had gone to Saturday, and it was just another outreach for them. But that wasn't why I was there, and I was never going to be part of that in-group because I didn't go to that high school. So really, I was very isolated growing up there as well, and I never had a good connection to it. And no one else could ever really answer all that many of my questions. And so I think one of the greatest failings of at least the Protestant church in the United States is that they don't have a good idea of where their own ideas come from.
Yeah.
And increasingly, as they become a less and less powerful force in society, they cling to their dogma without recognizing where their dogma comes from. Mm-hmm. And so that means that, when they talk about family values, people think that means they hate sex. And when they talk about defensive marriage, people think that means that they hate gays. And I don't truly believe that has to be that way, but I mean, like, if most people don't understand, and so, it's on a personal level, I feel very conflicted because how I wanted to grow up religious was different than the way I grew up religious. Mm-hmm. And I'm not religious anymore, but I have a lot of respect for it.
That makes sense.
I think that St. Augustine and the disciple Peter and would be some of my people that if I had to go back and retake senior English, and it was, if you had a dozen people to sit down at a long table, at dinner with you, they'd be some of the people that I would take. Because I don't think that religion gets so far outside of the human experience that you can't take actionable advice to live your life off from it. But you also have to understand the context in which they were writing. And, I mean, the fact that we live in an era where I'm looking at a fan that I can turn on that runs on electricity, that runs off of oil, is just not something that they had. Yeah. And we're so far outside that this, I think the greatest enemy of religion is not atheism, it's materialism. Once people attain a certain standard of, hey, the lights come on when I hit the switch, you start seeing church or mosque or synagogue or temple attendance drop precipitously. And it's because there's a level of comfort that's attained. And I think most people don't go beyond that. I think that it can be an extraordinarily repressive means of social and cultural control, but I also think it could be an extraordinarily beautiful sense of community forming around an idea that is greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. And I also think it could be both at the same time. I grew up in a church that was rich enough that the people that went there were people who all of their friends weren't religious because they were the same type of rich they were. They were the rare one that had personal faith anyways. Hmm. That's the type of church that launches missionaries. Your average church with 45 people in attendance that, the steeple is toppling over because they can't pay the maintenance fees on it, church in Oklahoma, of which there is one at least on almost every street corner, mm-hmm. is not the type of church that runs that. That's the majority of churches in this country, and they don't have any clue where their dogma comes from either. We're mostly just culturally Christian in this country, and so I feel kind of trapped between. When I talk to a religious person, I want to talk about the ideas behind where the religion came from. I want to talk about the history of where the religion was founded. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the world of Roman Judea and what these words were just so pregnant with meaning for Jews that yearn to be their own country again, yearn to not be occupied by these absolutely brutal and very recent conquerors in a long line of conquerors that the Jews just wanted rid of. To the point that, when Jesus died, it wasn't like, Jews were like, okay, screw it, Jesus, that's it. When they talk about, the prophecy under the star, there was a Jewish guy who came afterwards, and his name was Shimon ben Kokba, and he led the greatest revolt against the Romans that the Romans ever had. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were written in the aftermath of this failed revolt, where the Romans were just going blitzkrieg and killing everything, and they hid him in the cave, it talks about Simon ber Kokba being born under the prophesied star. So the Jews were using the exact same imagery for him as they did for Jesus, but Simon bar Kokhba died by suicide after after this immensely failed revolt. And the revolt failed so hard, by the way, and the Romans killed so many people that's what scattered the Jews. Like, the Romans were like, all right, you guys are pesky, I am going to delete Judea from the map, and being Romans, they did. And that's what scattered the Jews everywhere. I mean, that's why there's Jews in Mongolia now. The diaspora began under the Romans. And because that center of, like, Judea, Judaism was crushed, that was what began this really subversive idea of conquering through love that early Christianity was. This idea that, because Simon Bar Kokhba murdered 80,000 Romans in a night. That was his, that was his, I am starting Judea again, was he just murdered every Roman that he could find. And the Romans were really, really good at responding to that. It was very difficult for the Romans to respond to people who would go singing to their deaths in the Colosseum, or would forgive their tormentors as they were crucified. The Romans didn't know how to handle that. And it was this idea that allowed Christianity to spread. Now, again, as soon as Christianity got established, it reverted right back to the whole, Deus Vult, let's kill the non-believers thing, because Christianity, being a powerful religion by that point, behaved like all other powerful religions, and it becomes a really good way to rally the believers. And so, talking about the historiography of religion ties in really well to what I'm to what I'm interested in, but it's separate from how I personally believe, because I've never clicked, except for fleeting, wonderful moments, with people who were really able to talk and understand to the depth that I wanted to. And I kind of had to just make peace with that growing up, that most people didn't. And that even my father, who's a physician, very educated man, is so emotionally invested in it that if I pressed too hard, it would trip him out of his logic and into his emotion, and it just became a, well, you can't style thing. And so I think I'm going to keep chasing that, personally. I think I'm still going to be chasing these conversations, like we're having right now, until I kind of drink my fill. And from a macro level, which again, you asked me a personal question, and I'm like, ooh, history of Judea and the Romans. Like, this is what I mean by trending towards the macro. I will do this every time. It ties into these, what makes the world go round. In the West, we're probably the most atheistic we've ever been. But if you look at the world as a whole, it's the most religious the world has ever been, and that's not going to change. Atheism has always been a drop in the bucket compared to religion. But religion does not mean, hey, I want to die for my faith, because that's the radicals. And I'm gonna, I have this theory, and I really think I'm the one who came up with this. This is one of the only things that I'm like, I made this entirely. It's not just something that I borrowed from someone else. That if you have any group of people, and it doesn't matter what the group is, it doesn't matter why they formed, the radicals in the group drive where that group goes. And radicals, by definition, are the minority. And so the job of the majority is either to agree or disagree with the course set by the radicals. If they agree, fine, that's where you're going. If you disagree, then the job of the radicals is to come up with a different idea. But at no point does the moderate majority figure out or decide where they're going, because they're the moderates. They're the guys who show up to church 5 minutes late and go, I'm Christian. They're not the guys who are saying, because you're Christian, you must. And you'll see this with anything. You'll see this with homeowners associations. You'll see this with school groups. You'll see this with politics. You'll see this with businesses. Because the radicals, by definition, are the people who never stop. Almost all of the problems of groups in this country and in the world are radicals going beyond what the majority is comfortable with, but the majority either not having the willpower to stand up to them or not having the ability to stand up to them until they get ever more radicalized. That's the story of politics throughout my lifetime, at least in this country. And the radicals, getting enough power because they've solidified themselves so much that they can start, self-perpetuating and only helping themselves at the expense of everybody else. That's how jihad happens. That's how crusades happen. Is these radicals, these people who eat, breathe, sleep, Wahhabi, Salafist, Sunni Islam, or these people who eat, breathe, sleep, non-ecumenical Catholicism, and they call for a crusade, and they're able to either sway the moderates along, or the moderates just roll over and go, okay, fine, you do what you want, and that's how these things happen. And so to treat that in the modern era as a system in and of itself, where you can monitor these radicals versus these moderates, then you can start making numbers-based predictions on what's going to happen in the group, which ties into what I want to do. So it's complicated. I mean, on a personal level, I grew up very conflicted about it. I think I have a much better idea of what it actually means to me personally.
Yeah.
I still think that I'm not quite as at peace with the ideas of some of them yet. I think that would actually happen once I get independent, and once I start, especially once I move away from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That I can really start seeking that out, which is okay. Like I that's a goal, and it's actually one of the first pieces of that falling into place is realizing that that's a goal that I will work towards attaining. And then I've just talked about the macro, so I don't need to restate that. But it is complicated. It's one of the things that defines humanity is these ideas. One of the first things we did was create something larger than ourselves. I think that speaks to something very deep within humanity that is not going to go away. And I think most of what we talk about in our kind of snobbish nose in the air thought about the average religious person, which ironically is the radical religious person, not the average, not the median. When we talk about Muslims, we think about the radicals. That doesn't mean jihadists, by the way. That does mean the radicals, the people who eat, breathe, and sleep within madrasa and talk about Islam says this, women must do this, men must do this. We're not talking about the the falafel shop person that just wants to raise his kids and is Muslim because his parents were, and he just wants to do right by his kids. And Islam says that if he does this, he will have enough for his family. And this doesn't make him naive. This doesn't make him stupid. But if he's highly religious, by the numbers, it probably does make him poorer than the average person. And so I think the only thing that the last thing that I'll say is that learning about it and wanting to delve as deep as I am, it gives me a respect for the religion as a thing. I'm not. I don't approach religion from a sense of, well, because I'm more intelligent, because I don't believe this, I can I don't view myself as David Attenborough watching the monkeys swing through branches when I'm talking about these people who honestly believe something that I don't think exists. I call myself an agnostic. By rights I'm atheist. I don't believe there is a God, but most atheists that call themselves atheists, I think, have a degree of anti-theism. This Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins.
No, that's where I am. Yeah.
That if you're religious, you're dumb because you're, and I don't believe that. I think there is even a lot of grace in really disciplining yourself to believe something like that. For the longest time, I really wished that I was able to feel anything at all when I tried my hardest to be religious, because I really did, and there just wasn't anything. There just wasn't anything there for me. So it'll be interesting to have this conversation in 10 years with whoever I'm podcasting in 10 years. But that's religion for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because bringing up another question would take up a lot more time, and also have to pee. Do you have anything to plug right now? What's that website if you want to say what it is?
Sure. Well, the blog that just runs purely about Syria is called Oryx blog. It's Spion, Spioen, Cop, Kop, at blogport.com. Spion Cop is just a joke with a South African guy that I made. It's this ancient battle for some long-forgotten war in South African history. But made the website, and then Syria broke out, so now it's about Syria, even though it's named after South Africa. You can Google Oryx blog and you'll find it. And that's ORYX blog. And it's about it just does analysis. Every time people put out a picture, you're able to find new information about it. about the weapons and where they are and what they're doing and where they're heading and how many there are and what they've. I don't run the website, but I do contribute to it. We're actually active on Reddit. There's a Syrian Civil War Reddit page. It's probably the best thing. Reddit's used for cat pictures and angst, but there's no barrier to entry.
Yeah.
And that's why we use it. Anybody with an internet connection can get on it and start plugging into these other primary sources that we have. And it's so pervasive that we're able to hoover up some people because we don't have the money to advertise. And those are really my two things. This is my first podcast ever. I'm sure I've been rambling. I don't have notes. I don't have.
You're good.
So I don't really have any like this isn't how I'm making money yet. So I don't have anything to plug or whatnot. So I will say I want to do this again. If you think that I'm just
you're
whatever.
Great. No, this is great.
I think I really think that having a roundtable discussion with you and Terry and some of the other people that you've talked about, just about the second part of what we did, about like how we think and what our experiences are, would be great. And then also just bouncing off being able to relate our experiences about talking about the first part about what makes us tick to each other would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
It was
thank you.
Honestly, it was a little bit more dry than what I thought because I was talking so much about these really dense things, which is what I think about. Which is not I'm a lot more off the cuff just in conversation. So and I'm not apologizing. I like talking about this stuff, but it was. It was a lot denser than I anticipated it coming out, which was interesting too. It was interesting because I had no idea what it was going to be like. So, thank you.
Thank you. We're actually about to do a second one, so don't worry about that.
Sure.
But since we're breaking this into the other half, I just want to say my three things that I always close every podcast with, which is love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong. Thanks for listening.